My name is Isaiah Weiner. I'm a Senior Manager of Solutions Architecture in the partner organization. And the partner organization deals primarily with third-party products, ISVs and IHVs, that we use to augment capabilities for our customers. Today, we're going to jump right in and we're going to talk about things that pertain to connectors, gateways, and how to utilize AWS storage services to accomplish your goal of hybrid and in-cloud backup. The AWS services are the most mature in the storage segment. S3 was the first service that was launched by AWS, and it has had the most time in the field and in the hands of customers. It's often referred to as the Swiss Army knife of storage because it's so flexible and has very simple but very powerful semantics. We'll also talk a little bit about ingest options having to do with Direct Connect, our Snow family of products, as well as S3 transfer acceleration. So when we look at partner solutions, there's probably a lot of familiar logos up there. Based on the results of the survey, a lot of folks using things like Commvault, EMC products, IBM, NetBackup by Veritas. These are all products in the backup and recovery category that are vetted in such a way that we emphasize to our partners that they must raise the bar for our AWS customers so that the user experience, the customer experience, is superb. There's some products here that really stand out, and we'll go into them in more depth. But first I want to talk about what is a backup and what is not a backup. So when we talk about backup and recovery, we're not talking about just another copy of the data. We're talking about processes and procedures, software and policies that protect against what is, for the most part, extremely rare cases where software messes up and usually user error. The scenarios that backup administrators have to protect against range from accidental deletion to complete disaster recovery. And the most important thing here is that backups are an extra copy and not merely an archive. They're not the authoritative copy of the data. In fact, in many cases, they represent many copies of the data, but they are point-in-time consistent. They are point-in-time recoverable. They are searchable. They're in a catalog, and they're subject to other features like legal hold. So the main difference between backup and archive is that archive data is the single copy of the data, and that backups represent a point-in-time consistent copy of the data, but it's not the only one. Today we're going to talk about, if you can see on your screen what's been circled, how we can insert products into these roles, the recipient of all of the data, and as well as the mechanism by which the data gets there. There's 4 architectures that we're going to cover. The first one is the easiest one, and that's hybrid backup to the cloud. So what does that mean? That means an on-premises environment that's backing up data to AWS, and it's being persisted in AWS S3. Amazon S3 has incredible durability. It's never lost an object. And because the semantics of S3 are simple and powerful, it's low-hanging fruit for backup suites to integrate with. And that low-hanging fruit means that the customer experience is positive and the durability is very good. Combining all together, it means that backup administrators can experiment with low risk, and we will, in fact, as part of this webinar, we'll do a live demo to show you how you can configure one of these backup suites to use S3 and how you integrate the cloud library with your policies, reassigning clients. So when you talk about applications that talk to the cloud, sometimes they need help. So originally, when applications started talking to the cloud, they didn't have things like cloud connectors. They didn't have S3 connectors. And so they used cloud gateways. An excellent cloud gateway is the AWS Storage Gateway. It comes in sort of three flavors. The first flavor is as a virtual tape library. The second flavor is as an iSCSI LUN appliance providing iSCSI services for block purposes on premises. And then the third flavor is as a file gateway, whereby it writes data directly to S3, completely unmolested. So if you have an application, such as an older version of a backup suite that maybe you're not interested in upgrading, you can use a cloud gateway, such as AWS Storage Gateway, to be the bridge between your on-premises backup and AWS S3. One of the added benefits of the AWS Storage Gateway in its virtual tape library mode is the ability to talk not just to AWS S3, but also to Amazon Glacier. And that means that if you had data that was on tape today and you were interested in replacing tape at a cost point that would get you in the same, actually beat most on-premises tape deployments, you could use AWS Storage Gateway as the virtual tape library target for your backup suite. Now, you might ask, what are the suites that work with AWS Storage Gateway? And the answer is pretty much all of them. There's a great matrix of supportability on the AWS Storage Gateway product portion of the website. But if you've got it, chances are it's been tested or works. The virtual tape library interface is very well understood and very well defined in the field. There's been a lot of customers that have had their hands on it, and it's been working well for a long time. The recent addition is File Gateway mode. File Gateway is an NFS interface to a virtual appliance that can live on premises or in the cloud. And when you write files to it, it does the translation to objects for you and stores that data in Amazon S3. The benefit of this is that for workloads such as backup media agents or media servers that only know how to talk to a file system, if that operating system supports NFS, you can use you can use the File Gateway to be that bridge to Amazon S3. If you're using a recent version of a backup suite, such as EMC Networker with the Cloud Boost appliance, Tivoli, which is now called Spectrum Protect by IBM, Commvault Sympana, or Veritas Net Backup, these backup suites now, for the last version, at least on all of them, support talking directly to Amazon S3 through their own cloud connector. They often use the phrasing disk library in the cloud disk library, or cloud storage pool. So if you don't desire to manage a virtual appliance, if you'd like to bypass that method, or if you have the option to just simply talk directly to Amazon S3, the backup suites can do it. So in this first architecture, it's simply using your internet connection, or if you have a direct connect link for a large bandwidth or dedicated network latency to a nearby AWS region, you can send that data directly over it to Amazon S3. The nice thing about this architecture is that you can get started immediately. You don't have to do anything if you have a version of the backup software that talks to S3. It's usually 3 or 4 clicks, and if you have a version of the software that doesn't, the provisioning of the storage gateway appliance is very, very easy, and it's driven through the AWS console. If you're using the EMC products, such as Networker itself doesn't talk directly to Amazon S3. You have to use the Cloud Boost appliance, and if you happen to have any of the other portfolio products, such as Data Domain, and you want to use the cataloged workflow, the coordination of those kinds of appliances talking through Cloud Boost is done by Networker. So the second one is what we call a hybrid robo backup, and robo is remote office or branch office. And the difference between the two is that in the first one, all of the control points are on premises, and in the second one, some of the control points are in the cloud. Beyond that, they're very similar, but what this architecture enables you to do in a hybrid scenario is very easily do restores in AWS, because the control points, in the case of a net backup, it would be a master. In the case of Commvault Sympana, it would be the ComCell controller. These components live inside of AWS in order to have great independence, and you can have a server target to be the restore target. The third architecture is what you do when you don't want to have any backup infrastructure at all, and I'll go over and I'll demonstrate for you some of the features in one of our partner products for this. And what this is a backup and recovery as a service product. What's useful about this is if you like the economic elements of the cloud and being able to simply pay for what you're going to consume, and your backup and recovery feature requirements are sparse isn't exactly the right word, but if you don't desire to have a lot of knobs to turn, backup and recovery as a service is a great option. If you are interested in things like your users being able to do self-service backup and recovery, going for a SaaS provider is probably the only way to really enable that. And there's a lot of great use cases around hardware refreshes where these kinds of deployments can help. There's other interesting points like these providers that the provider that we're going to talk about today, in fact, is based entirely on AWS. So in a way, you're actually leveraging the AWS services without having to manage any of the infrastructure yourself, without having to know anything about the software infrastructure or manage the master or the media agents or anything like that. The policies are all web-driven, and in addition to backup and recovery, these software as a service providers of backup and recovery often have features like file sync and share, similar to like a Dropbox, but private inside of your organization. They often also have things like legal hold policies to aid in e-discovery types of requirements, and can provide, related to that, full chain of custody reports. So if you don't know for sure that your deleted files are actually being retained, these kinds of services are a nice, easy way to implement those kinds of control. And then the last architecture is what does it look like when you're all in on the cloud? And the answer is it looks pretty similar to the first one. The only difference is that you're managing all of the components. So your clients that you're deploying in EC2 are all in. The backup infrastructure, the media agents and the masters are all in. And the point of persistence is Amazon S3. Now, one of the really important points here is that because all of your backup data, including your catalogs, are in the cloud, you want to make sure that you pay close attention to that shared responsibility around redundancy. So one of the things that we emphasize to customers is that you should be prepared for things like instance failures and EBS volume failures. And if you're using a typical backup and recovery solution, there are some things in there that would require some extra care. So a great example is a lot of backup administrators will set up their backup infrastructure and neglect to back up their catalog offsite. This is especially important in AWS because if your catalog exists only in one availability zone, if something happens to that availability zone, you would have lost your catalog. So backing up your catalog becomes critically important. It's very important when you're doing it on-prem as well, but there's something explicit around making sure that you're able to deal with things like availability zone failures. One of the nice things about this architecture being in the cloud is that because the media servers are very close to Amazon S3, the throughput on restores is very good. Now, one of the points of confusion around a lot of backup suites is the parallelism in restores. If you're restoring in most backup suites a single file out of an existing backup set, it is possible that you might find performance implications as the backup software has to unpack all of the backup job data. The way around this is to ensure that you maximize the parallelism that your backup software can do. And this is especially important when we start talking about meeting SLAs. And we'll talk about agent support as well, and what that means for you in a hybrid scenario as well as in the cloud. There's a wide variety of agents that are supported for doing application consistent backups, but there's also special integration with AWS that a lot of backup providers have gone to the effort to do, and I'd like to touch on that a little bit as well. So if we look at this in a matrix, those architectures, which products support what? Well, what you probably notice first is that they all support backing up to the cloud from on-premises. And where did these logos come from? They came from our shortlisted and qualified set of partner solutions that we run through something called the AWS Storage Competency Program. The second most check marks are in the cloud. And what's important about this is that you might notice that the IBM solution for TSM or Spectrum Protect isn't supported in the cloud. And at the moment, that's simply a supportability component. So as soon as IBM finishes all of their testing and support matrices, you'll see a check mark there as well. And then the third obvious thing is that there's only one check mark for backup and recovery as a service, and that's Dhruva. And Dhruva really stands out among backup and recovery solutions. And the primary reason it stands out is because it's all in on AWS, which means everything that you do with Dhruva is talking to AWS, and that has provided for them a very quick time to market because they've been able to capitalize on the security and scalability of AWS managed services. The other thing that's interesting about that is that they've been in this role for a while. They didn't start out on AWS, but they moved there very quickly. And the side effect to that is that they've had a lot of time in front of customers, and they've developed their features based on customer feedback, which coincidentally is exactly what we do at AWS. So now I'm going to switch over to sharing my screen with you. Look at Commvault Sampana. And if you look at the CommCell console under libraries, if you right click, you can add cloud storage. I've already filled this out, but you can see that the number of object platforms that they support is far and wide. And what that means for you as a customer is that if you have, for example, a private on-premises object store that you also want to use, you can. A lot of people try a little bit of everything, and so it's very common for when people are getting used to processes to try things on-prem. But if you want to jump straight to S3, we encourage that, and it's a great customer experience. So I have one media agent in my console because it's just for demo purposes. I've specified and created a role and an access key along with a secret key, and I have a library here that's empty. And I know that it's empty because I haven't written anything to it, and I'll prove that it's empty using our AWS CLI tools. So there's nothing in there. And the AWS CLI tools are super easy to use no matter what platform you're using, whether it's Windows or Mac or Linux. So now I've clicked OK, and in the background, Simpana is qualifying that to make sure that the S3 endpoint that it's talking to is supporting all of the APIs that it's going to need. And so if you have some kind of permissions error or you don't have roles specified properly for the set of access keys, it'll tell you. It returns pretty decent error messages. So after you define that cloud library, and you can see that in the properties that it's ready, that it's been enabled already. And if we could click on disk usage, you can see that it hasn't written anything, as you would have expected. When we want to use it, it's time to go to the policy section. So there's a few things that are important here. The first thing is we have to set up a storage policy that's going to use it. And the second thing is that the client that we have, which in this case is the edge client or the file system-based client for Simpana that's present on this media agent, needs to be assigned to that policy. And then the third thing is the schedule. So we'll cover the first thing. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set up a new storage policy. And the purpose of this storage policy is to protect data. I'm going to call it 2S3. And then I click through the wizard, and here's my opportunity to select my cloud disk library, my cloud storage library. And when I click next, it asks me which media agent I want to use to connect to this. Now, why is this important? It's really common in backup environments to see parallelism among products that support it. Veritas Net Backup, Commvault, Simpana, they all scale out. They're natively scale-out architectures. It's been in their design since the beginning. Same thing is true of EMC Networker. And when you map that to AWS, one way to think about it is that you could have a media agent in every availability zone. And that way, your backups for hosts that are in that availability zone can have locality to a media agent, not sending traffic over availability zone boundaries, which would result in excess charges potentially, as well as giving you the redundancy that in the event of an availability zone problem, that the rest of your backup workloads aren't going to be interrupted. And you can map the clients to the policy and therefore to the media agent. So I'm going to click next. So by default, most of the modern backup software has support for pretty massive concepts like multiplexing. Multiplexing is a great concept for getting data out fast, getting it off-site. If you were in a scenario where you had tight SLAs around that, it would definitely behoove you to enable it. In this case, it doesn't really matter for the purposes of this, but multiplexing as well as things like deduplication or encryption are options. So I'm actually going to not enable deduplication. I'm going to turn that off so that I don't have to specify a deduplication database location after this. So here's the summary, and I'm going to click Finish on the policy. So it really isn't that difficult. You can get started really quickly. I'm going to take a look at the subclient association. So you can see that I just have the one client here. So one way to do this is to look at the properties of that existing policy. I see here associated subclients. I'm going to reassociate all of them. There's just one, but if there were hundreds, you'd use the same methodology. And I'm going to associate the 2S3 policy for those clients, and I'm going to click OK. And you'll see in the background that this will update, that the number of clients for 2S3 will jump from 0 to 1. So it's been done. And if you were to go look at your job controller or your event viewer, actually the event viewer, it would tell you about all of the things that you've been doing, like the fact that the library is ready. And then when you're ready to kick off protection policies, you can do it manually, or you can use the schedule. We're going to explore the backup and recovery as a service. And you know what's cool about Dhruva, and I'm just going to log in here with our an internal account here, is that it's entirely web-based. Your interface is web-based. They really are doing everything sort of in a modern way. A lot of the applications, when you look at the software infrastructure for things like Veritas.NET Backup and Commvault Sympana, not to say that they're antiquated. They're not by any stretch of the imagination. They're very effective, but they were written in a different era. And so Commvault Sympana, for example, now has a web-based interface. You don't have to use the Java app. NetBackup has things like InfoMap to give you sort of a web-based drill down into what you're protecting. So in this case, I've got 2 users that are active. I'm going to drill down on myself. I'm actually protecting this laptop, and I'm traveling at the moment, and since I installed the agent, I haven't been able to complete a backup. But if I click on the devices, I can see that it's a Mac. And if I am interested in using features like legal hold or sync and share, that's something that I can do not only as an administrator but also as a normal user. Now, one of the interesting things about Dhruva and the InSync product is that the way that the security model is set up, since they're already a multi-tenant solution, they assume that some of their customers might have multi-tenant requirements as well. And so they really architected for flexibility. One of the challenges in backup environments is that it's incredibly common for backup administrators to have access to data that maybe they, by policy, shouldn't. And so if they're managing the certificates, that's hard to disable. Well, Dhruva has made it possible for end customers to manage their own certificates, but still the metadata about what they're protecting is searchable and can be subject to things like legal hold. So legal hold's a great feature. So I'd like to talk about legal hold for just a second. Let's see here, governance. Yes, so things like audit trails. You can search. There's admin and there's user. So that whole subject of are admins accessing things that it's possible they shouldn't, that can be reported on as well. And data loss prevention, which is the notion that you might have some data that is showing up places that it shouldn't, or let's say if you had hardware that was misplaced or misappropriated, stolen laptops, those kinds of things. The data loss prevention feature can be very helpful there. Legal hold is something that you create a policy for. There's a couple different ways to create a policy. I'm just going to call this my hold, and I'm going to enter in myself as the user for having hold. And so one of the questions is, do you want to back up all the data or do you not back up, sorry, do you want to hold all the data? Do you want to hold just the last, or do you want to hold the date range? So date range is important because that could be subject to the legal discovery. So let's say, for example, that I'm only interested in holding March. And I want to make sure that no data was accidentally deleted from data that I want to make sure that data that was either accidentally or intentionally deleted was retained. So when I create that policy, now in the background, all of the metadata associated with the backup is being searched and the policy is being applied. If I'm an end user, I get a different kind of interface. So if I will log in here with my own account, I have the ability to control the content that I'm sharing with other people. So for example, I have this image here, and I'm going to, for example, anonymously share it with somebody. Let's see here. So I'll get the link, and now I have a shareable link. To make sure that I can see that it works, and it gives me a document preview. And if I want to download the raw file, I can do that too. And this is a live demo, it's not a video, so if something breaks, that's just the risk that we take. I will come back to that. Oh, there it goes. One of my favorite photos. So as a user, I have now the ability to share, and all the content that I'm sharing can also be subject to legal hold, audit trails, that sort of thing. If I'm an IT administrator or a backup administrator, I've just added a feature and functionality to my user base without having to invest in a third-party solution that is focused on MFT, which is function file transfer. Similarly, if I have multiple devices, I can use the workspaces feature to manage them separately. For example, I might have data that I want to be present on my tablet that I don't want to be present on my laptop. So that is sort of a little walkthrough of what is it like to use their product. It's all very simple. Let's see here if I can grab the configuration here for their agent. You can see that they let you specify by policy what the backup interval is. I have locked down the profile here about how much bandwidth things are using, as well as CPU priority. If I want to change that, I can do it here under Profiles, and I'll just log back in. So under Profiles, this is the default profile, and all of those features around CPU and whether or not the users themselves can edit privacy settings or the admin has access to the user data are selectable. So great story about a Dhruva customer. There was a large pharmaceutical customer. They were doing a laptop refresh of tens of thousands of systems. And they discovered that their backup agent software wouldn't be supported in their refresh platform. And not only that, it turned out a lot of their backups hadn't been working anyway. So what happened was they sent out Dhruva self-service agent download links to all of the agent and installed it on their old system, got a full backup, and then they downloaded the agent and installed it on the new systems and did a restore. And in addition to the data, like from a file perspective, that was restored, it also restored things like desktop settings. And for that customer's accessibility users, people who had visual or input disabilities, that meant that they didn't require any special assistance from core IT or from the help desk folks. So they were able to carry out their refresh and switch platforms and verify that everybody had access to all of their data, all pretty much self-service. And then for users that were concentrated in offices, Dhruva provides a caching appliance to help minimize the amount of input streams. There's within a tenancy, meaning within your company, they'll do things like dedupe and compress backup data sets that are all coming from all of the systems in a single office, that sort of thing. And we'll go back to this. So that's it on the content. I'd like to open the floor now for questions. We got a lot of great questions today. So one question about, can Dhruva manage EBS snapshots for you? And I want to touch on EBS snapshots just generally, as well as the other agents. And that's actually something that I forgot to do. So I'd actually, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to share my screen one more time, and we'll go back to the Commvault window as well. So when you click on New Client in Timpana, you'll see all of these icons for various things. Well, one of them is Amazon. And as you might infer, that means to manage an Amazon EC2 instance as if it's a real instance, the way we treat the instance with things like AMIs and EBS snapshots. What's different about that is that it's not simply looking at the contents of the file, it's actually using all of our APIs. This level of integration is supported by products like Veeam and Spectrum Protect and Commvault Timpana. The Dhruva product InSync is really about more things, but they have a Phoenix product that manages servers, and they will manage the contents of the servers using things like files, but I believe those support the EBS component. Now, a word about managing EBS snapshots. All of these backup suites catalog the contents of the snapshots. So what that means is when you take a snapshot, the media server is going to create a new volume based on that snapshot, and then it's going to crawl the entirety of the volume. And you might ask, well, why can't it just look at the incremental changes? And the answer is that we, Amazon, don't provide an API for customers or partners to get that. So it can make your SLAs a little bit longer for doing the cataloging part. So if your SLA is about taking the snapshot and you need the durability of the data, that will be very quick, but the cataloging component will take a little bit longer. And the reason I bring that up is it's always a common question around when I'm managing EBS volumes with my backup software, things might, they seem to take a little bit longer. Now, why would you use the EBS snapshot method rather than the file method? And the answer is just simplicity. There's a lot of customers who, when they go to AWS, they see how simple it is to control things in the console and the API, and they desire to extend that simplicity into the rest of their life, and backup is a great place to do that. If you have policies that are already set up around things like files, there's nothing that stops you from using that method. You can still use that method. Hopefully that answers the question. Yes, if you're using the Phoenix product, you can manage those EBS snapshots, but it might be a little bit slower than you think it is. One person commented that they didn't think net backup was scale out. You can have multiple media servers and distribute your clients across them. Um, and that fits most people's definitions of scale out. The exception definitely is Spectrum Protect, IBM's backup product, formerly known as TSM. That is a scale up product, and IBM is working on how to make that scale out. So we have time for just 2 to 3 more questions. Uh, One question is, uh, are there any solutions that just wrap around native AWS capabilities? And the answer is yes. There's quite a few scripts, but one of the definitions of backup is that it's not just another copy. That you need to have that searchable and catalogable component. So if by your own definitions, simply having those snapshots as a backup, then by all means, go ahead and do that. But for most people who have to meet compliance regulations, it's not going to fit the bill. One question is there a soft limit on the amount of data you can back up? There isn't. One of the best things about using S3 is that the S3 component is actually pretty limitless. It scales almost infinitely. We just keep adding capacity. If you're using features like deduplication, that can create some imposed limits around the amount of data that is being cataloged with hashes, fingerprints of individual segments. So if you're using features like deduplication, you probably want to offload that from a net backup MSDP deployment or from a Commvault Sympana deployment onto something that's really designed to do dedupe. So for the cloud, there's one product that does it better than pretty much anybody else, and it's all they do. Do one thing and do it well. And that product is called Store Reduce. They're available on the AWS Marketplace. The features that require dedupe inside of a lot of the conventional backup systems also require some pretty beefy hardware. So this helps you get around that by lowering your costs. So we have time for one more question. One person asked, can you integrate Data Domain Virtual Edition with AWS Storage Gateway? And this is a great question because with Data Domain recently announcing their cloud tier, you don't even need to use AWS Storage Gateway if you don't want to. So if you're on a current version of the software with that entitlement, you can use cloud tier to write directly to S3. It does use some small objects, and